Welcome, dear listener, to another tranquil tale from the Sleep Atlas. Tonight, allow your body to settle beneath the gentle weight of your covers and let your mind drift slowly into the quiet rhythms of a faraway world. We'll begin our journey in a forgotten land where the air is soft as silk and the nights glow with the shimmer of 1,000 lanterns. Chapter 1: The Garden of Whispers. The night had fallen softly over the hills of Umara. In this quiet corner of the empire, the sun never truly vanished. It only faded into the arms of the moon, leaving behind a sky the color of melted indigo. A pale hush settled over the valley, wrapping every branch and blossom in gentle stillness. High above the city walls, nestled within a royal courtyard, the Garden of Whispers lay in full bloom. It was said the garden was planted by a queen who dreamed of silence. No birds sang there, no fountains gurgled, and even the wind passed lightly through its silken leaves. The petals never rustled, and the grass never cracked underfoot. Everything within its stone walls was designed for quiet dreaming. Tonight, the moon hung low over Umara, wide and pearlescent. It poured its light like milk over the lantern trees, those tall, spiral-trunked beings with translucent fruit that glowed when touched by night. They shimmered now, every branch twinkling with globes of gentle gold and smoky silver, as if the stars themselves had chosen to rest a while in their limbs. And beneath these trees, wrapped in a shawl of cream-colored silk, sat a young girl named Sumi. Her eyes, slow and thoughtful, traced the arc of the moon above the temple roofs. She did not speak. She never did in the garden. Words felt too heavy, too sharp for this place. Instead, she simply breathed. Long, soft inhales. Even longer, slower exhales. She placed one hand flat upon the moss beside her, the other resting gently on her chest. She closed her eyes and listened to nothing. And in that nothing, everything whispered. The Garden of Whispers was older than anyone could remember. Even the palace archivists, with their scrolls and glass memory bells, had no record of its beginning. It simply had always been. The emperors came and went, as did wars and winters, but the garden remained unchanged, unhurried. Sumi had found the garden by accident, years ago, chasing a paper kite across the palace roofs. A gust of wind had taken the kite, and she had followed, clambering over quiet walkways and past stone fox statues until the wind had died, and the silence had begun. She remembered stepping barefoot through its gate for the first time. The change was immediate. No footsteps, no echo, just breath and earth and moonlight. And then, the lanterns. At first, she had thought they were fruits, but they pulsed and flickered like breath. Some floated mid-air, tethered by invisible strings. Others bobbed gently within pools of water, lined with smooth obsidian stones. At first night, she had stayed until morning, curled at the base of a whispering cherry tree, dreaming of things she did not yet know. Ever since, she returned often, sometimes for an hour, sometimes until the stars blinked out one by one into dawn. The garden asked nothing of her. It gave her no tasks, no questions. It simply waited and breathed. That night, as Sumi sat beneath her favorite tree, a weeping blossom whose flowers opened only to moonlight, she reached out to one of the lanterns. It floated just within reach, a round and gentle orb the size of her palm. Its glow was faint, as if asleep. She cupped it with both hands, and it stirred. A soft, pulsing warmth traveled through her fingers. The light brightened slightly, glowing a warm, creamy hue neither yellow nor white, but something softer, something in between. It vibrated gently in her hands, not with sound, but with feeling like a memory trying to form. Sumi closed her eyes and breathed. She felt the moss under her legs, cool and pillowy. The smell of night jasmine lingered in the air. The wind brushed past, as light as a silk ribbon drawn across the skin. The lantern pulsed again once, then twice, and then it rose, not from her hands, but from within them, as if remembering how to float. It lifted upward and spun once in the air, slowly, like a leaf falling in reverse. Then it drifted toward the center of the garden. Sumi watched as it joined dozens of other lanterns now waking under the moonlight, rising together like a soft tide of stars returning to the sky. She smiled and stayed very still. Few knew this, but the Garden of Whispers had a keeper. Not a gardener, not a guard, but someone far older, quieter. Her name was Aya. No one had ever seen her arrive or leave. She simply was. A silver-haired woman with eyes like wet clay and a robe the color of faded parchment. She never spoke above a whisper, and her steps were quieter than dust. She never walked directly towards Sumi, never disturbed her, never asked anything. But she always appeared somewhere nearby, trimming a branch with golden shears, dusting a moss-covered rock, pouring rainwater from a porcelain bowl into the roots of a lantern tree. Tonight, Sumi saw her across the garden, crouched beside a basin of lotus blossoms. She was humming, not aloud, but somewhere deeper, like a song you remember in your bones, a vibration in the stillness. Sumi felt it too, that hum, and it soothed her. She closed her eyes again and let the music settle beneath her ribs, where it joined her breathing in a quiet rhythm. In and out and in again. There was a bench in the garden, made not of stone or wood, but woven reeds and pressed clouds. It was never cold. Sumi sometimes lay there when she felt too much inside. Tonight, she walked toward it. Each step was slow, deliberate, bare feet pressing gently into moss that gave way like memory foam. The bench was beneath a canopy of silver-barked trees, their leaves shaped like stars, their trunks wrapped in ivy that glowed faintly blue. As she reached the bench, she felt the warmth of the cushion rise to meet her. It accepted her weight like it had been waiting. She lay on her side, arms folded close, and looked up. Above her, the lanterns continued to drift, slow as thought, silent as sleep. She did not think of tomorrow. She did not think of anything. Just breath, just glow, just now. And slowly, the night deepened, the garden dimmed, the stars seemed closer, and Sumi slept. Chapter 2. The Silk Path. Sumi awoke not with a jolt, but with a slow return, as if her soul had been gently gathered from the edge of the stars and placed back into her body, petal by petal. Her eyes remained closed. She felt warmth first, like morning sun filtered through lace. Then scent, soft tea blossoms and something else cool, like mint carried on breeze. When she finally opened her eyes, it was still night, but a different kind of night, a deeper one. The sky above was darker now, a shade close to velvet, and the stars had shifted into strange new patterns she did not recognize. The garden around her remained, but it felt farther away, as if behind a veil. The moss beneath her was softer, more luminous, and the lanterns above floated not like stars, but like dreams. Sumi sat up slowly, her breath calm, unhurried. There was no fear, only curiosity and a sense of welcome. In front of her, where the bench ended, a new path had formed. It had not been there before. It was narrow and pale, woven of silk threads stretched tightly like the surface of a harp. It shimmered faintly under her gaze, each thread catching the moonlight and turning it into quiet music. She stood, barefoot, and placed her foot upon the path. It did not sink. It held her gently, like a memory not yet lost. As she walked, the air changed. It grew cooler, not cold, but fresh, like a forest just after rain. The scents of the garden faded slowly behind her, replaced by something older: sandalwood, riverstone, the faint sweetness of wild plums. She walked slowly, each step deliberate, and with every step, the world around her shifted. Trees unfolded, impossibly tall and thin, with leaves like fans and bark smooth as lacquered silk. Their trunks glowed faintly, etched with lines of light that pulsed in rhythm with her breath. The path curved gently, like a question being whispered. She followed. Around her, no birds sang, but there were sounds now soft, natural ones. The brush of wind against leaf, the slow drip of water from branch to earth, the hum of distant frogs echoing from unseen ponds. She felt herself lengthen, quieten. Thoughts loosened their grip, floating backward into the soft corners of her mind. She remembered the feeling of being rocked to sleep as a child, and for a moment, the silk beneath her feet seemed to sway. The path led her to a clearing, circular and wide, where a single tree stood at the center. Unlike the others, this tree had no leaves. It was made entirely of ribbons. Thousands of them, each a different color, hung from its branches like falling rain, frozen in time. They moved without breeze, curling and twisting gently, as if dancing to a sound only they could hear. Sumi approached slowly, drawn not by reason, but by feeling. The air around the tree was warm and still. She reached out to touch one of the ribbons, a pale lavender strip with golden edges, and as her fingers brushed it, she felt a memory rise. It wasn't hers. It was the memory of a child learning to whistle. A boy in the mountains, chasing goats and laughing into the open sky. She stepped back, gently startled, yet calm. The ribbon stilled. She touched another, this one deep crimson, thick and textured. A woman painting by candlelight, her brush moving in circles, soft music playing from a bamboo flute by the window. Each ribbon a memory, each one a story. Not loud, not demanding, just there, waiting. Sumi walked in slow circles beneath the tree, her hand trailing across silk and satin, wool and linen, brushing through tailies of lives once lived and moments never spoken. The tree welcomed her. It wrapped its silence around her, and she leaned her forehead against the trunk. There was no bark, just soft fabric, warm from generations of light. A feeling filled her chest, one she could not name. Not joy, not sorrow, something in between, something like reverence. She sat beneath the tree and breathed in its quiet. The lanterns above had followed her, bobbing softly at the edge of the clearing. One drifted closer, hovering near her shoulder. She cupped it again in her hands. This one was cool and pale, almost clear. As it brightened, she felt her heartbeat slow, her eyelids grow heavy. The world softened at the edges. The ribbon swayed gently. The stars watched quietly. And Sumi, once more, let herself drift into sleep. Chapter 3. The Bridge of Mist. Sumi awoke beneath the ribbon tree, wrapped in a warmth that had no source, like being cradled in memory itself. Her limbs felt light, almost untethered, and for a long while she didn't move. She simply lay still, watching the ribbons sway above her in a gentle rhythm that reminded her of lullabies she couldn't quite recall. Slowly, she sat up. The silk path had returned, now extending beyond the clearing in a soft curve, half glimpsed through a veil of mist that had crept into the grove. It wasn't a cold mist, nor thick. It glowed faintly, like breath in winter light, and carried the scent of river reeds and warm stone. With quiet steps, Sumi continued her journey, following the ribbon trail as it led her through an ever-changing dreamscape. The trees thinned, the air opened, and soon she arrived at the edge of a lake. Its waters were completely still, so still they looked solid, like a mirror of obsidian. In the middle of the lake stood a bridge, arched and delicate, made entirely of glass. Each step shimmered faintly, its surface carved with swirling patterns that resembled flowing water. The mist hovered low over the lake's surface, and the lanterns that had followed her now floated silently at either side of the bridge, lighting a path across. Sumi stepped onto the first pane. It did not creak or bend. Instead, it greeted her feet like the garden's most gentle, inviting. As she moved forward, her reflection followed below, but not as she expected. It was not herself she saw, or not exactly. It was her, but younger, laughing barefoot across the palace tiles, chasing petals in the breeze. Then older, quiet, eyes wide with wonder beneath a canopy of starlight. The bridge remembered her, or perhaps it remembered all who had walked it. With each step, her reflection changed, showing her versions of herself through time and dream, moments real, moments wished for, and moments she hadn't yet known she needed. The further she walked, the mist thickened, but it was a friendly mist, warm and perfumed, curling softly around her ankles, rising to her waist like a silken bath. On the other side of the bridge, the land changed. The air shimmered with delicate colors, like light seen through closed eyelids. Small bells hung from low branches made of glass, pearl, and silver. They did not ring with sound, but with sensation. As Sumi passed, she felt their music inside her body, a hum at the base of her spine, a warmth across her collarbone, a cool breeze within her thoughts. She paused beneath a tree of bells. Its trunk spiraled upward like a dancer, and its leaves were flat and wide like open hands. She placed her fingers gently upon one of the bells. Instantly, a memory rose, not hers, but still familiar. A grandmother's hand brushing a child's hair back with infinite tenderness. A cup of tea poured slowly in silence. A breeze through paper doors. Sumi did not weep. There was no sadness in these memories. Only depth, only peace. She continued walking, the bells swaying above her like wind chimes in a dream. The lanterns kept pace, floating softly at her shoulders. One had turned pale pink. Another now glowed faint green, like the veins of spring leaves. Ahead, she saw a small stone pavilion, surrounded by lily pools. Each lily pad was the size of a small boat, and some even rocked gently, as if they had once held passengers. The pavilion was empty, except for a single low table, upon which sat a cup of something steaming. She approached, sat. The bench welcomed her weight like it had been carved for her. She lifted the cup. It was weightless. The scent rose, jasmine, rice, and a trace of plum. She drank slowly. The warmth spread through her like sunlight on skin. As the cup emptied, the mist thickened again. It curled around the pavilion, drawing soft curtains over the view. The lanterns dimmed. Her body slowed. And without effort or decision, Sumi leaned back, closed her eyes, and let herself be drawn once more into sleep. Chapter 4. The Palace of Quiet Thoughts. When Sumi opened her eyes again, she was no longer in the pavilion. She lay instead upon a bed of woven reeds, soft as clouds and warm from within, as if it had remembered every sleeper who had ever rested there. Around her, the mist had lifted. The world had changed once more. She was inside a palace, not one of gold and marble, but of soft stone and paper screens, of bamboo lattice and silken drapes that moved like water. The air was still and cool, touched by the scent of pressed flowers and distant incense. Light poured through the open walls, filtered through thin rice paper, casting delicate shadows of birds and leaves that may not have been there at all. She rose slowly, not out of urgency, but with the same quiet grace as everything in this place. Her bare feet met polished wood, smooth as river stone. No doors barred her way. The palace unfolded around her like a memory rediscovered, room after room of simple beauty. In one, a fountain the size of a teacup whispered into itself, endlessly. In another, a painted screen depicted a mountain range beneath a sky full of silver cranes. No sound broke the calm. Even her own breath felt like a welcome guest, not an interruption. As she wandered, she felt her thoughts slow, their edges softened. Worries dissolved like sugar in tea. Questions quieted. In one long corridor, hung with hundreds of wind scrolls, tiny paper flags with handwritten poems, she paused. Each scroll fluttered slightly, though there was no wind. She touched one gently. The poem written upon it faded softly as her fingers passed over it. In its place, new ink appeared. It wrote not in letters, but in feeling. She could not read the words. She could only understand them. You are exactly where you need to be. She smiled and walked on. Further in, the palace opened to an inner courtyard bathed in blue light. It was night again, but not the night of before. The sky here was navy and violet, scattered with unfamiliar stars. At the center of the courtyard was a pool of still water, black as ink, reflecting a moon that wasn't quite the same moon she had known. Around the pool, cushions had been placed in gentle rings. Some were empty. Others held dreamers, motionless but peaceful sleeping souls, perhaps, or memories of them. No one stirred. All rested. A soft rustle behind her made her turn. Aya, the garden keeper, stood at the edge of the courtyard, watching silently. She nodded once, not to summon or command, but to acknowledge. Sumi nodded in return. The lanterns had gathered above the pool. They spun slowly, their light woven into constellations of soft green, pale lilac, and warm ivory. One descended toward her and hovered near her shoulder. Its glow was faint, but steady. She followed it across the courtyard and into a final room round and wide, with a domed ceiling painted like a sky at twilight. In the center of the room sat a bed of soft moss and silk, surrounded by thin strands of silver thread that swayed like grass in wind. The lantern drifted down, resting just above the bed. She stepped forward, lay down, and closed her eyes. The bed exhaled around her, rising slightly as if to cradle her. Her limbs sank into its softness. Her mind floated. She did not need to think anymore. She did not need to understand. It was only breath, only softness, only peace. The palace dimmed. The stars above shimmered once, then stilled. And Sumi, once more, surrendered to sleep. Chapter 5. The Skyway of Sleeping Birds. Sumi awoke not with a start, but with a floating sensation, as though her body was weightless and the air around her had become water. She did not open her eyes right away. She let the feeling settle. The softness stretched through her fingers and toes like morning light stretching through curtains. When her eyes finally blinked open, the world above her was sky, not the sky of Omara, nor the painted ceiling of the palace, but a living expanse of lavender and honey-colored clouds drifting slowly across a canvas of pale dawn. She was lying on a platform made of branches and feathers, high above any ground she could see. Around her, enormous nests were perched along the limbs of a vast tree, whose trunk disappeared upward and downward into mist. Each nest glowed faintly, cradling a sleeper curled within children, elders, travelers wrapped in blankets woven from stories and breath. Above her, the sky was filled with birds, hundreds of them gliding silently between the clouds. They were not ordinary birds. Their wings shimmered with soft blues and opals, their eyes closed as if they too were dreaming. Some floated upside down. Others flew in slow circles, trailing ribbons of starlight. None flapped their wings. None made a sound. It was a skyway for sleeping birds, a passageway of peaceful flight where nothing chased and nothing fled. A small bird landed gently at the edge of Sumi's nest. It had feathers like pressed paper and eyes made of pearl. It looked at her with no urgency. She felt no need to speak. The bird tilted its head once, then turned and began to glide slowly along a path of woven vines that stretched from one nest to another. Without question, she followed. The vine path was wide and springy beneath her feet, like walking on tightly spun thread. Around her, the air shimmered with distant lullabies, melodies not heard, but felt like music drifting through skin. As she walked, the nests she passed revealed more sleepers. A girl curled beside a flute, a man wrapped in a cloak of golden leaves, an elderly woman with feathers in her hair and a book open on her chest. All slept, all dreamt, all glowed. The path rose gently, arching toward a dome of cloud that pulsed faintly like a heartbeat. The bird flew just ahead, its wings catching trails of light with every glide. When they reached the dome, the cloud parted. Inside was a sphere of glass, suspended mid-air. It held a miniature moon at its center, glowing soft silver, orbiting slowly in an endless hush. The bird landed beside the sphere. Sumi approached. As she placed her hand upon the glass, the surface warmed and melted beneath her touch. The room unfolded. She stepped into it. It was larger inside than out. The moon floated gently above, and below her feet, the floor was made of woven starlight, shifting with her weight like ripples on water. The space was filled with floating orbs, like the lanterns from the garden, but these were translucent, almost invisible. As she walked among them, each one responded with a soft glow, some cool blue, others golden, some pink, or green, or silver. Each orb hummed with memory, not her own, but human all the same. She did not hear voices, only feelings. The hush of snow falling at dusk, the weight of a child sleeping against your shoulder, the warmth of a teacup passed between old friends. Sumi wandered among the orbs, her breath slow, her steps quiet. Time meant nothing here. She floated. She listened. She rested. The small bird circled once above her, then drifted back toward the opening of the dome. She followed. Outside, the sky had darkened once more, a gentle twilight returning. The tree beneath them pulsed faintly with light, its limbs gently rocking the nests in rhythms older than music. The bird returned her to her own resting place, circling once before curling beside her. She lay down again, the nest forming perfectly to her shape. Above her, the sleeping birds continued to drift. She closed her eyes. The breeze softened, and once more, the dream deepened. Part 6. The Return Through Light. The return did not begin with movement, but with warmth, gentle, steady, and complete, like being slowly wrapped in sunlight. Sumi felt it before she saw it, a soft pulse of light beneath her rib cage, glowing outward like a lantern waking from slumber. Her body remained still, nested high among the dreaming branches of the Skyway, yet something within her began to rise. Not upward, not outward, but inward. She did not resist. She let the warmth fill her limbs, her thoughts, her breath. When her eyes opened, the sky was not night or dawn, but a soft in-between pale gold melting into lilac, horizonless and slow. Around her, the sleeping birds stirred faintly, their feathers rustling like silk on skin. The tree that held her nest began to glow along its veins, lines of light tracing downward, calling gently. The small bird that had led her before lifted its head. It looked at her, then leapt into the air, gliding not forward now, but inward, toward the trunk itself. Sumi stood and followed. She walked along a branch wide as a road, covered in moss the color of clouds. She stepped inside. The world folded. The colors around her flowed like ink in water, blooming and dissolving without sound. She was not walking now, but drifting like a petal caught in the tide of light. There were no walls, no gravity, only motion and stillness, balanced like breath. Around her memories passed some hers, some not brief gentle flashes. The first time, her fingertips had touched the surface of a quiet pond, the rustle of pages. Turned in a sunlit room, the moment a name is whispered just before sleep. She did not grasp them. She did not need to. They passed like birds through trees. The light deepened. Soft pinks turned to coral, gold to ivory, then to silver. The warmth within her grew brighter, not hotter, a quiet rising of presence. Ahead, a shape began to form a circle of woven roots, familiar moss, lanterns gently swaying in a garden she knew. The Garden of Whispers. She was returning. She stepped through. The garden accepted her like a breath drawn in after a long silence. The trees had not changed. The air still held the scent of jasmine and old stone. Lanterns floated lazily above, dim and drowsy. The bench was there. So was the weeping blossom tree. And beneath it, Aya stood, her silver hair glowing faintly under the sky. She said nothing. She only smiled and bowed. Sumi bowed in return. She crossed the moss, slow and barefoot, until she reached her spot beneath the tree. The moment she sat down, she felt the full circle of her journey settle within her. Not a dream, not a destination, but a part of her, a garden planted in the heart. She breathed in, she breathed out. The lanterns pulsed above her. The moss cradled her. The stars returned. And as the moon rose high over Umara once more, Sumi closed her eyes. wrapped in the silence of the garden, the warmth of her breath, and the memory of all that she had seen. Sleep welcomed her, not with closing doors, but with opening skies. And in that quiet, endless space, she drifted once more softly, slowly, completely into dream.